Hello and welcome to At the Table. I'm Audrey Galix. Thank you so much for being with us. Over the past several months, nearly 150 Jewish institutions across the United States and in Canada, as well as in Atlanta, from schools to community centers and even children's museums not in Atlanta, have received bomb threats. Tombstones have been toppled in Jewish cemeteries in St. Louis and in Philadelphia. And the night before this recording session, there was another threat at the Marcus Jewish Community Center in Atlanta. To speak about security precautions, policies, and procedures in Metro Atlanta, I have with me Cathal Lucy. He is the Director of Community-Wide Security for the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta. Cathal, thanks for being with us at the table.
Thank you for having me.
Have I characterized the situation accurately? Actually, what I meant to say is that there seems to be an uptick in the number of threats. Not necessarily attacks, but defacings, perhaps.
You're correct in that statement, yes. And, since the beginning of January, we've seen multiple waves of threats that have come in through Jewish communities throughout the U.S.
And is the number, it's about 130 some odd, or
it's
now
about 130, 35 plus at this point. So we've had additional threats that have come in just today. So in addition to that number, so
what happens when a threat comes in? Multiple phone calls? Are there?
Well, it depends on the nature of the threat. I'll talk in Atlanta specifically. We've been affected in Atlanta now with several bomb threats and an email threat as of late.
I know early January or something.
Yeah,
like that.
January of 2016 was one that we received before this wave. Since in the year of 2017, we received one last year. So which was out of the norm because it was on its own, and we hadn't received anything else in the region at that time or within the U.S. But since January of 2017, in the region, we received one at a local Jewish school, the Marcus Jewish Community Center of Atlanta in Dunwoody received one bomb threat, and also the JCC, the Jewish Community Center in Augusta, Georgia, as well. So that was the beginning of January. And then, throughout that period from then till now, there's been multiple waves throughout the U.S. where other major cities have been receiving the same type of threats at JCCs and schools that, like you mentioned. And the latest we received was the one last evening, which came in a format of an email at the Marcus Jewish Community Center of Atlanta here.
And so recently there was a community-wide phone call.
Yes.
I mean, what happens when a call like this comes in, or an email?
Well, we're very lucky here in Atlanta because the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta established the first community-wide security director position back in 2001. My predecessor, who was also a retired Secret Service agent like myself, came in as a pilot program. There was a member of our community who recognized the need to create this position, and a pilot program was established, and he ended up staying 14 years. So in that sense, throughout that time, he's been able to create a strong platform for the community. So we have a Federation Security Committee through the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta, where I have almost 100 members now that represent the locations that you spoke about, schools, synagogues, and the like, where we meet quarterly to discuss security protocols of this nature in events like bomb threats or anything else that's security related. So
obviously there's a need that was identified many years ago.
Yes.
2001, which is understandable.
And I always say security is a living document. It's something that we look at every day. You learn from every crisis that happens. You look back and you judge, what did I do right? What can I do better the next time? And you learn from it. So we have since then, since our incidents in early January, there's things that we've fine-tuned and looked at, and information's been pushed out to the community. But again, we're lucky to have that platform where a good portion of our community, through the Federation Security Committee, has been educated on how to handle things like this. And you see the results of that, such as what we've seen at the JCC and at the school in the Atlanta region when this happened, where protocols were followed, emergency action plans were established, and things went smoothly for us in that sense. So,
I want to just take a little side note. You mentioned that you had a background, 25 years in the Secret Service.
Mm-hmm.
How did that prepare you for this?
Well, that
can anything really?
Not, but what it prepared me for is what it showed me again is that, as much as you can prepare in advance, the better you're going to react to something, And when I was with the Secret Service, we continuously trained. We always, when I was on the president's detail for 5 years, part of our cycle was 2 weeks of training during that period. We do, different shifts, and then we go into a 2-week cycle. I had the opportunity to train quite a bit with the agency and learn. And I pulled a lot of information from it that I apply to it now. When I first came in as the community-wide security director and looked at the position, my first thought was coming into the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta. And my thought was, how can my experiences be applied to the community? And after I met with my predecessor, Dick Raisler, who I mentioned earlier, who was also a retired Secret Service agent, there was a very good fit. We work on vulnerabilities, security assessments, and the like, which I do now here in Atlanta.
So what can an institution do to protect itself? Cameras, security fences?
Well, there's a lot of things they can do. The biggest thing is getting people within the congregation or the community involved. Like I always say, in the word community and the word security, there's a you and I in there for a reason. It takes you and I as a community to develop a security plan and to have that plan in place and to educate people and make sure people are aware of what to do. There's things that we do. Part of my position through the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta, I work as a consultant, and I'm there at the opportunity for anybody from the community to, contact me to come out free of charge through the Federation and go out and do a security assessment of their properties. That's quite a bit of my work involves that, where I'll go out to a synagogue or a school and do a vulnerability assessment, basically walk around and meet with them and talk about their security protocols. Not just the physical stuff, but also emergency action plans, things they have in place, educating staff, talking to them about evacuation points and protocols that take place in situations we're dealing with now, such bomb threats and all that. But
I was thinking, when in schools they have fire drills, I suppose.
Yeah,
is that something that you
similar
would do?
to that. Why wouldn't the fire drill is more in-house for the location itself. Mine is more specific to security and against bomb threats or active shooter or things along those lines.
So what can individuals do? Do they have an opportunity to avail themselves, or do we have those kinds of training opportunities?
Again, to educate themselves and get involved with their synagogues or schools, be in tune as to what the protocols are. A lot of times, we'll run different drills at locations, and there'll be parents at schools that may be, just there in normal business, and we'll run a drill unannounced, and they're kind of, a little bit taken aback, like, what do I do? So again, the more you educate, the better you're going to be prepared for it. So, get involved, support your school, support your synagogue, and know what the emergency action plans are. Education and communication are the big ones.
Supporting your synagogue. I understand there at least one congregation I'm aware of, happens to be my own, has established a special fund to raise money for extra security guards, say not even for high holidays when more people are there, but on a regular Sabbath, Friday evening service. Is that happening more and more, do you think?
I'm getting more so as of late. Yeah, people are starting to look into different avenues to create funding to enhance security. We're very lucky because through the federal government we have the nonprofit security grant. Basically, Department of Homeland Security allocates funds, which is distributed through FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. It goes to the state level, and here in Georgia, it's the Georgia Emergency Management Agency. They control the nonprofit security grant here in the state of Georgia. Basically, what that allows is locations in the community will fill out an application, what's called an investment justification, or an IJ application, where they'll, a 5-page document, where they'll outline and document the reasons why they need to get in security enhancements at their locations. So
you have to prove that there have been existing threats, or just even the possibility of a threat.
And part of my job is to, what's happening as of late is going out and doing those security assessments, which I mentioned earlier, and identifying these vulnerabilities, whether it's access control, fencing, cameras along those lines, target hardening.
Yeah, I was listening to the call you had. It was the first time I ever heard that expression.
It's been a great benefit to the Jewish community, since it began. I think we're just under $3 million right now for funding that we received in the community for all our locations. And you see it in work, you see it in place now. When I go to locations and see fencing and access control and camera systems that are in place, it's a lot of that is because of the nonprofit security grant that we've been able to participate in.
And I understand that there's a possibility, a letter was circulating in Congress on the federal level to increase the funding for those.
I did read that there was that they're looking at that too. So
is that enough?
Well, again, security is
enough.
Security is very expensive. Coming from the White House, I was assigned there for 5 years, and there's a lot of assets that are there that that we had, and things still happen. So it goes back to common sense. It's your community. It goes back to what I said. It's educating your congregants. You're being aware, and everybody takes part in it. You know?
So how does an organization know that a threat, an email or a call is a credible threat or should be taken seriously, or should they just blanket all be taken seriously?
We take everything seriously. You know, I mean, it's like, and one of the things that we talk about specifically is like the bomb threats. You know, that's happening as of late. We've distributed a bomb threat protocol sheet to all our locations where everybody has it, you know, by their phones. So if something was to be received, kind of gives them a template to go by to ask specific questions, because the more information you can extract from a phone call, the better you're going to be prepared, and it kind of sets you up as how do you react to it. The question comes up about evacuation all the time. You know, you do a risk assessment based upon the information that you've received, and then kind of judge how you're going to react to it. So.
Now, if somebody sees something, and I understand that too is part of it, if you see something, say something, I think that's the expression that's being used. What should people do? Is there a hotline? Is there a website? Or what can they text messages? Or
well,
anything?
it depends on what the circumstances are when you say they see something. And if I'm at a synagogue and I see something suspicious, I'll bring it to a member of the staff or the administration to maybe see if I can identify who it belongs to. If nobody does, and then obviously you have to take the means to get somebody involved. Maybe it's something that's unattended or suspicious, depending how it's categorized. You know, you'd call in authorities to look at it, whether it's law enforcement, if it reaches that level. So,
do you recommend if somebody sees like an unattended, I don't know, diaper bag or whatever, should they go and check it out themselves? Or?
No, I wouldn't recommend that they go over and kind of physically touch it, but I think I'd bring it to somebody's attention who's part of the staff to say, excuse me, but I've just noticed that there's been a bag over there that nobody's come to, and just take the time to ask around to say, excuse me, does anybody belong to this? Does this bag belong to anybody?
And don't be embarrassed to say that.
A lot of times it happens. You see it at the airport. You know, where people are security conscious now, and they're very heightened awareness levels now. And you see people kind of looking at things more so than they used to. That's something I've done myself for years. But you see it more so now where people will question things and bring it to the attention of authorities, or just ask people in a room to say, excuse me, who does that bag belong to? And the majority of the time, thankfully, somebody will say, oh, I'm sorry, that's my bag, I left it there. So, you know.
And those of us who've had opportunities to live internationally know that some of these security measures have been fairly routine over the years.
Absolutely.
It's relatively new for the United States.
Absolutely. Having been assigned myself overseas at the U.S. Embassy in Paris for 4 years in my previous job with the Secret Service as an attaché, I had the opportunity to cover 23 countries worldwide autonomously. So I was very involved with different law enforcement agencies, and just what you spoke about, saw how different protocols were in place that, that maybe the U.S. wasn't at that level at that point now.
You walk into a movie theater or a department store or something like that.
I had the opportunity to travel to Israel last year with the Secure Community Network in Department of Homeland Security, and the Secure Community Network is affiliated with the Jewish Federation of North America. Very supportive to all the federations throughout the U.S. They provide information to us on a daily basis on InfoShare documents, intelligence resources, and the like, and they support all the community-wide security directors. But we took a trip over to Israel last year to see, get some behind-the-scenes looks at different things and how they do it in Israel, and the different protocols are in place, and people get acclimated to it and accustomed to it. And then you get some people that come from Israel that maybe come to the U.S. and are used to things that being at a certain level, and they come here and don't understand why we're not doing what we do, So, but it's kind of a mix. I always describe it as an arm wrestle where, you get people that want to pin you down on one side to the extreme, and some don't. They want to go the other way and have things open and free based upon the fact that it's religious, institutions, but you got to find that point in the middle where both win. So,
I understand we've got about 30 seconds left. The Muslim community here in Atlanta has had some death threats, I understand, several masjids. Have you been consulting at all with any communities outside the Jewish community?
I have. I think at the direction of our CEO, Eric Robbins, to the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta, several weeks ago, when this was all happening, we had a discussion, and I've been out to the Islamic Center in North Fulton and met with the imam and also the director of security at their location, just to kind of offer support and talk to him. And I actually brought him on board and told him about the nonprofit security grant and offered my services if I could help out. So we look at it as, this is a community thing. It's not just affecting us, it affects everybody across the board, and we're there to help and to share intelligence and share information however we can. So.
Cathal Lucy, the Director of Community-Wide Security for the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta, thank you for being with us at the table. At the table, we'll return in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to At the Table. I'm Audrey Galix. Thank you so much for being with us. In this program, we're talking about anti-Semitic threats, bomb threats, emails, phone calls to Jewish sites, as well as we mentioned in the first part of our show, some threats that have come into Muslim sites across the United States, including some masjids, some mosques in the metro Atlanta area. To talk about the impact on and the response of Atlanta's Muslim community, I have with me Dr. Khalid Siddiq. He's a leader in Atlanta's Muslim community. I want to thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you.
And first, I would like to express from the AIB network regret that your community has faced these threats. I understand they're quite graphic, the emails.
Right, yes. Over the last several weeks, several mosques in town have received threats. One of them was a written note with a cartoon-like caricature with the head being decapitated. The others are more email threats, which would say that there are 160 million of us and we are going to drive Muslims, blacks, and Mexicans out of the country, and this is your last chance, and consider yourself fortunate that we are getting this warning. So that is another kind of threat that has gone. I think it's a generic threat, but we as Muslims and all other mosques have taken it seriously because it is a question of life and death, as well as upholding the basic fundamental principle of freedom of religion, which is so much cherished by us all in this country.
So once you received the threat, what did the community do, or what did your community do?
Well, basically, we have a good working relationship and contacts with the Homeland Security, different as arms of it, the FBI, the police, the Justice Department, and we informed them and informed some other organizations that look after the interests of the Muslim community and mosques as well. They, of course, launch an investigation, but
any leads or anything like that?
We have not heard anything as yet. That's at a broader level. Of course, at the community level, we make sure that our community members do not do anything that may be considered as reactionary in any way. So we do try to, however, warn our people to be extra cautious. And there are several little things that we put in place just over and above normal.
You have armed security guards, for example. I know some synagogues have it now, not just for the high holidays.
Some places have, some don't. So it's kind of a individual decision. But there are certainly people looking out there who have the capacity to protect the congregation. Then there are communications with the police departments where active shooter training has been given to some people, some mosques as well. So those are some of the things. But the one thing which, as you know, in Islam, one of the 7 articles of faith is the reliance on God, that nothing happens in our lives without the hand of God guiding it. So we are both cautious as well as prayerful that nothing happens, and we hope and pray that God Almighty, who is over and above all these things that human beings do, He will be our protector and our guide. But we have to do our part as well.
To have the faith as well as take action.
Yeah, take the means and the faith, both reliance on God and the necessary steps at our level.
I understand that there are some federal funds that are available or some grants available, I guess perhaps to the state. Is that something that the Muslim community is thinking about doing, is applying for some of these grants?
We might tap into those. At the moment, we have not. But one thing I think which we are encouraged in all this is the tremendous amount of support that we have received from the non-Muslims and community at large. We have received letters from people that we have never seen, who have expressed their support, and in fact, they've gone on to even ask for apologies, apologize on behalf of those, that I'm sorry this is happening in this country. This is so un-American. And then one person actually, to one of the mosques, he sent a $500 donation, just kind of, use it towards your security, for example. We just had visit a mosque day I think it was
A recent weekend. Yeah.
over the weekend, and we had close to 200 people come to our mosque. It was a beautiful event, and this happened over 22 mosques in over town. So there has been this effort of instead of insulating ourselves, I think this thing has provided an opportunity for the community, the Muslim community, the Jewish community, Christian community, and in general the community at large to in some ways come together and bond together so that now we can provide the infrastructure of support with each other. And so this has really been a tremendous experience for us, both in a positive and a negative way.
I referenced the anti-Semitic, the anti-Jewish threats as well, and of course there have been many reports in the news media as well as on social media how the Muslim community has come together in a very proactive way to raise funds to help restore some of these desecrated cemeteries.
Certainly. See, when the tragic events of desecrating the cemeteries and the threats that went to the synagogues, etc., all those things, when they happened, the Muslim community just felt really very uneasy and distraught that this is happening to another believer, a practicer of a faith. And you'll be surprised that a social media campaign was launched to collect funds, and I believe over $100,000 plus were collected within just a couple of days, and support was given to them. See, one of the things that people should understand that people of faith have a bond that binds them together. No matter which religion you may be, a person of faith will feel attracted to another person of faith, although that person of faith may be of a different person.
And not just because it happened to you, it could happen to me.
It happened to me. Plus, I think the Quran itself says that synagogues, churches, and places in which God's name is remembered and recited, they are hallowed spaces, just like the mosques are. And the Quranic verse actually says that for had it not been for God's repelling some men by means of others, cloisters and churches and synagogues and mosques wherein the name of God is often mentioned would surely have been pulled down. You know, the human nature can sometimes, because of hatred and animosity, go beyond the individual harm and go to harm the institutions where God's name is recited. And in Islam, we consider all places of worship as sacred, whether they may be mosques or they may be synagogues or they may be temples. And that is why in the Islamic teachings, even during war, you're not supposed to destroy the places of worship, hurt the people who have taken refuge in them, hurt the people who are monks or rabbis or priests of any kind. So there is a inbuilt protection for people of God and places of God in the religion itself. And that's why it comes as a great surprise to us when we see threats being given to places of worship, because they should be beyond, they should not be a part of the differences that we have.
And of course, the masjid where you attend this has not been the first threat that you've received.
No, we've received threats like this before. And I remember, I think probably you were there as well, we had a threat where mosques all over the country were being targeted, and there were people who were going to come with banners and weapons and to burn the copies of the Quran and things like that. And we were so overwhelmed by about over 80 people who were people of faith, leaders of churches and organizations, religious and social and interfaith organizations, who came together and really expressed a tremendous amount of support. And that tremendous amount of support really gave us a lot of faith in the goodness of people at large. I think basically people are good at heart, but sometimes things which are probably nobody's fault, but maybe it's overexpression of certain events in the media or events
They're
that happen.
susceptible maybe to different messages.
Perceptions. Social media has done a lot to kind of discredit different faiths in different countries, in different minds. So when those things happen, then the truth gets blurred, and the difference between good and evil gets kind of smeared. So one starts looking at all people through one lens, and starts kind of categorizing people that all Muslims are like this, or all Christians are like this, or all Jews are like this. Whereas if you look at human nature, a majority of the people, and I can say that for Islam as well as for its teachings, and I'm sure you can do the same for the Jewish faith, and the Christians can do for their Christian faith, that a majority of people are good people. They are people who do not wish harm to others, but sometimes their perceptions are so distorted by events which are beyond anybody's control.
Now I'm going to, and forgive me, I'd like to ask you personally, I know that you have been drawn into working in the interfaith arena and working as head of education and outreach with your particular masjid. And what was it about you? And I guess I'm thinking more globally as well. What is it about certain people that draws them? Or was there somebody who inspired you? I mean, you could have not done that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I personally feel is that we live in a society where the strength of this society lies in knowing each other better. And sometimes when we do not interact with people of either different faiths or of different colors or of different professions, we kind of close our minds and do not appreciate the issues, the problems, and the sensitivities of the other people. So I always find that by interacting with people of other faith, I'm doing two things. Number one, I'm learning more about the society that I've chosen to live in, and I've lived here almost 39 years. And secondly, I would want them to know who I am and want them to know what my beliefs are, what my practices are, what my cultural strengths and weaknesses are, so that they do not consider me as the other, as somebody who is outside their domain of activity. Because we have something what we call kind of, a larger community. And the Quran refers to that in a very beautiful way. And that verse is translated by saying, "O mankind, we have made you male and female and have divided you into nations and tribes so that you may know one another. Surely the most honored amongst you in the eyes of God is the one who is the most righteous or who is the best in deeds." So I think by interacting with others, I'm opening myself to having them look at me as how I, as a Muslim, live, and to make them feel comfortable that I pose no threat to anyone.
Dr. Khalid Siddiq, leader in the Atlanta Muslim community, thanks for being with us at the table. And thank you for being with us at the table. See you next time.
Thank you.